My first question will start with Zach. How did you how did you come up with the sniffles term there, which I think is pretty accurate given how that when we talk online or you share like kids being sick and sniffles and things like that. So how did you come across that terminology to use for your talk?
That's appropriate, right? Well, so the idea it was supposed to be something of a play on the scam, right? So the single component Angular module. So yeah, that was kind of the idea behind it. So same principle, just doesn't have to be a component. It can be anything, and instead of an Angular module, it's an NX lib. So I mock it at the beginning because it's kind of ridiculous if you make your entire workspace nothing but sniffles. But if you can, if it helps, I think, in your graph in some points to relieve a choke point or to get out of a bucket lib, I think it's actually a good idea in some scenarios. Just not all the time. So.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha there. Matt, you did a talk on deploying Lambdas to AWS.
Yes.
Did you run into like any specific roadblocks where you were kind of going through that before you landed on that solution, or what? And I guess two-part question: is there anything else as far as deploying from maybe a monorepo? If there's any challenges there, and are you planning on like using that same kind of strategy in other areas?
Yeah, I think the main things that we found were that we needed a way to separate out the way to build everything. As the monorepo grows, you have so many dependencies, and if you package everything every time, it can be pretty crazy. We had some issues and continue to have a few issues with Webpack not being smart enough to differentiate which things in a lib you've actually imported. So, if you bring in a Nest dependency or something in a lib and you're importing, sometimes it will think that you need that, even if the stuff that you imported does not need that. So then when we split apart that build process, we were able to kind of say, like, we're going to have a separate package JSON. We're going to install exactly what we need. And then we're not going to have to worry about like getting the kitchen sink for every single thing that needs to be built. And that has worked really well. I mean, our small functions are quick and easy, and they build efficiently, and the bigger things just kind of do their own thing inside the Docker container. So I would definitely use it again. It has been sweet, and I'm a big fan of Lambda. So if it's possible to run it in Lambda, I try to do it.
Yeah, cool. I haven't been able to do anything with AWS and Lambdas yet. So I was, like I said, when I saw that talk, I was really excited about that there.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Let's see.
Devin, someone wants to know how your NXtend libraries are going.
They're going really well. I've actually been working on them quite a bit recently, getting everything moved over to the new dev kit stuff. So it's been a lot of fun, a lot of things to kind of relearn, but it's been really fun, and I really like the new dev kits. So expect like a major release for pretty much everything here soon.
Cool.
It's actually what I've been doing this past 2 days, really. Watching Nx Conf, working on my plugins. So
all right, cool. That's it. I mean, anytime you have to change something is like, not ideal, but glad to hear that the experience with the new dev kit is good.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely recommend it. If anyone's getting into plugin development, I would try the dev kit first, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yvonne, there's a couple questions. One, where do you get your energy from? Well, you're muted, but let me try to interpret. Red Bull.
Got it. I get it from the sun. We have a lot of sun down here in Georgia, and it's like naturally energizing.
Oh, yeah. And humidity, right?
Yeah. So every day I just go out and sunbathe and get some energy.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't have guessed that, but now you know. Now everyone knows. Did you before the talk? Do you use NX in your do you use Next? Not Next, Nest. Too many NXS words. do you use Nest in your day job, or was this a new experience for you?
Yeah. So it's for me, most of my talks, I learned something. So I usually use talks as a way to learn something new. Especially like if you're working in it started off when you working in corporate environments, you kind of have your stack, but I use talks as a way to learn new technology outside of work. So I just kind of keep that same concept because it works really well for me. So usually it's something that I do not know anything about that I have to learn about in order to teach it. So it also keeps me being a good teacher because if I don't know about it and I have to go and explain it to somebody, I usually try to have that context of if I didn't know, like I didn't know exactly what was going on, how do I explain it to somebody else so that they can understand it? So I keep that same concept in my talks.
Cool. I really enjoyed your talk. I always enjoy your talks. I didn't want to set it up and set expectations if you weren't going to do something theatrical, but you didn't disappoint.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll chime in if I sound okay. Y'all can let me know if I do or not.
You don't sound okay, but I can tell what you're saying. So.
We're still here for you.
Thank you.
I think Jeff Krieger here has like sabotaged something.
We were fine yesterday. I was fine yesterday. I'll try to push through real quick.
Watching the stream now, so I'm humiliating him. Because he's got his iPad here, and I see all the text notifications. So I'm just watching the stream now, so I'm humiliating him. Because he's got his iPad here, and I see all the text notifications. So I'm just reverb. Sorry, we're getting reverb. I'm going to let Brandon talk because it's better than me talking. Because he's got his iPad here, and I see all the text notifications. So I'm just reverb. Sorry, we're getting reverb. I'm going to let Brandon talk because it's better than me talking.
What is going on? There we go.
Okay. Am I still a robot? Y'all can let me know.
No.
Brandon, you're good. I think it is Jeff.
Okay, so all this time it was Jeff and not me. No, I was just kidding. Well, you could tell me if I'm going that way again. You give me a thumbs up or that way. But I'll get my question out really quick for Yvonne. Did you learn anything else about NestJS when you were putting the talk together? I saw you mention a couple of people in the community that actually helped you. So can you just talk about that, or what kind of things they helped you with? Oh, you're on mute again.
Yeah, so another thing I like to do with my talks is like basically take something, a concept that I don't know anything about, and then I usually have to ask other people about it. But it also gives me a chance to connect with others that are in the space. So I would not have ever like really got my relationship that I have with Brandon if I didn't take on schematics my first talk.
Yeah.
And I just kind of used some material and Manfred as well. So it was Manfred and Brandon who was helping me that first time. But I had and it also humbles you, right? So you're in the space a very long time. You kind of get used to just being in your lane. But when you do something new, you have to reach out to other people and, just kind of learn from them. Did I answer the question? Was there another part? I think I forgot another part. But yeah, so just kind of how I do, like I take a concept, do a little research, take a concept that sounds fun. And this time, actually, I used the community. So I asked the question, I don't know if you didn't get to see it, but I asked the community, like when they were new to Nx, something that tripped them up. Not to say that Nx is bad or they don't have good documentation, but just like as a new developer, there's always something that kind of trips you up. Or if you're starting something new, like what did you wish that you knew about, or that had a really good article out there that you can use in order to figure that issue out. So I know as a developer, as a new developer, as a mid-level developer, that's always the case. So I wanted to take the input from the community this time and have it be something that they actually had a problem with to get them more involved with the conference actually. So in this way, they actually had an input in what went on in the conference because I took that concept I took one of their issues and made it the talk. And so that's where I think it's one Kiwi Dev one, and it was Taylor, I think it was Taylor Ackley So that's how I came to be talking to those two, because those two were the ones that were talking about the debug issue. So
yeah, I think
thanks guys for your help.
yeah, shout out to them. I like that you found new friends for putting that talk together. So that was pretty cool. We had a Storybook question here. I guess Ankita and Kyler, they can speak to this one, or if anyone else can jump in also. Like, can you talk about maybe a little more about how using, excuse me, how using like Storybook kind of like improved your workflow, and how that came together as far as what you were doing before you kind of moved into that area?
I can talk for a little bit, and Kyler, you can add on if you want to. So it definitely helped us to organize, really think about our UI kit components basically, and also have our design system components that we were building on to be not just be living along with the same code base, but also being able to run it and just experiment with different values that the input values, or any parameters that the component might have, and how it reacts to it. So, and also like testing and visual testing, we were able to share that link with our designers who maybe would not as often log on to our product, and usually tested it that way, try to get through the flow, try to get to the last step of a form to see what the stepper looks like when it's over there, or something like that. So it was helpful to get everyone's eyes on and visually test it, approve it, and be very confident that we're headed in the right direction with our presentational components. So really helped us to build a strong design system for ourselves also.
I just wanted to add to that. One of the big things that it's done for me is helped me develop presentational components in isolation. It's easy to get lost when you're building a bunch of stuff in your application. It's easy to get lost in all the components and all the component level code you have there. Being able to develop in isolation allows you to focus on that particular component, just the inputs that it has and the outputs. And Ankita actually taught me about controls with Storybook Stories, so that you can dynamically change those inputs while you're testing in Storybook, and kind of see how your component reacts to that. Like, for example, if one of the inputs doesn't get something, that div may collapse in the UI, and that's something you would want to know, right? So that's how it's really helped me.
Yeah, and Storybook also has a lot of helpful add-ons. I mean, controls is something that's inbuilt, but you can also toggle your themes and see your component not just in your regular theme, but in all the different themes, light theme, dark theme, that you might have. And yeah, I mean, I feel like we probably tend to ignore the presentational aspect or the design aspect of our app sometimes, but it's really helped us to build a better looking app, visually appealing, and improved UX for our app. So I can add on to recommend it. Yeah.
I can add on to the presentational component kind of concept too. At Ionic for AppFlow, we found that Storybook can be like really useful for simulating, I guess, what I would call server state, right? So if, let's say you have something that's making a data request and you want to easily test the error state, it can be kind of annoying to, go through that process, actually running your app. So spinning that up in Storybook and even having some tests around that can be really helpful, because you don't have to worry about configuring an error that, you hopefully don't run into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely so. I had another Storybook question. Is there a way to provide test data right in the Storybook for control with a tree, or maybe some like complex data structure?
Yeah, I mean, with the controls add-on, you can just add a JSON and change one value in the JSON. Suppose you can basically add any kind of data, test data for your component and play with it with the controls plugin. So it shouldn't restrict you in the ways that you can test your components. And also, I mean, you shouldn't have to rewrite your code just to make things work in Storybook. But Storybook supports a lot of things for testing different types of data, no data, or just different aspects of the component. You can just, there's so many ways that you can play around with. So
there's another question related to that, which is, are the Storybook Cypress E2E tests a good alternative for unit testing? Like, I guess compared to something like Jest or Karma, Jasmine. I'd put that to Ankita or Kyler or other folks I'm sure have thoughts too.
I mean, we use both Cypress and Jest because we keep unit tests in Jest, but Cypress for end-to-end. And we've also started using Chromatic. So just trying in everything to help make our visual tests better. And it's definitely worked. It's helped us a lot in identifying bugs that as a developer, you might not think of edge cases while testing it yourself, but our Cypress team helps with coming up with all sort of automated data and testing it. So it's just more testing, and who doesn't like more testing?
Anyone else have thoughts on that? I personally, like at Narwhal, I know a lot of folks have moved more to Cypress, like more things they would have done in Jest before they moved to Cypress, just because it's fast and pleasant and easy and nice to write against Storybook.
Yeah, I've used that combination in my own personal projects a lot. I just like developing the Cypress because you get that immediate visual feedback, you know. I love writing Jest tests. They're nice and speedy, but having that visual feedback is really great. And we've also experimented with using mock service worker, MSW, alongside Storybook to like mock out some requests for some larger components as well. So kind of the combination of those three things have been really enjoyable to use for us.
It's cool. I hadn't heard of mock service worker. Is that specific Cypress utility?
Nope. It can be used for pretty much anything. I mean, you can set it up like in your Jest setup test file, and it essentially like intercepts all API requests, and you can just write mock data, and inline in a given test or something like that, you can override a route. So if you want to test different types of data or responses and whatnot, it's pretty easy. But I highly recommend it. MSW is the actual package name.
Cool.
I tend to get a little nervous when there are too many end-to-end tests. Like I know they're sweet. I know it's kind of like the ultimate confidence. It's also the ultimate release blocker for at least what I've seen. Because it's like, you know, if you're real heavy on the most fragile things, then like, you know, especially if you are at an organization that has like some really large combined pipelines that, you know, can stand in the way of everybody's code going out, those end-to-end tests are like, you know, I know there's ways to write them so that they're not as brittle, but as the complexity grows, like you're going to have timeouts. You're going to have, especially at Cisco, devices that just don't respond for a minute or whatever the thing might be. So, you know, I think it's been hard to find the balance between like everything in a unit test. You know that it isn't broken, but you don't know that it works. And then too many end-to-end tests where you basically can't release software and everyone's like panicking because their merges can't get in or whatever the trade-offs are.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing we've seen organizations do to work around that problem a little bit is to have two suites of end-to-end tests. Like you'll have a suite that's like basically close to functional like tests, like functional tests of presentation components, and then a suite that's probably managed by the QA team that's the more flake-prone end-to-end tests, and that way you can minimize the risk that way. But that is a real concern. Even those end-to-end tests can, you've got to have them under control.
Yep.
Flakes are bad. You just need to eliminate flakes. Ooh, we've got our names on the screen now. Somebody asked, I don't remember which presentation this pattern was in, but do they have to create a lib per UI component, or can they group UI components under the same UI lib? Of course, you can do either, but maybe someone has some thoughts on how you decide how you group them.
I can talk a little bit how I do that. I guess basically, if it's going to be shared across multiple components, I usually have it I organize it in a shared directory by domain. So if it's going to be specific to, like, let's say feature heroes, multiple apps might need to have that feature, then it's like a unit all on its own, kind of like almost like a plugin or whatever. If you need this functionality to get and display heroes, you have this this kind of shared plugin, this feature library. So any type of feature like that is kind of how I organize that.
Yeah.
Zach, how about you?
I agree. I think figuring out how to group these things by domain is probably the best way of going about things. You don't want to end up with that bucket where you just have like your all your shared components. I think that would be maybe a poor idea. But if you could figure out a section off your workspace into some domains where well, if something's going to depend on one of the components in this bucket, it'll depend on the other ones too. That's the kind of library you want to set up, so that when you're looking at it, it's kind of like you're collapsing those components into a group. So when you're looking at your depth graph, you see, okay, yeah, there's that lib with my hero components. So if something needs that, it'll probably need the other ones too. I think that's a good use of that Goldilocks principle of not being too hot, not too cold, not too big, not too small. So
I personally, I make a lib for every function in every module of my workspace. So I have a workspace with one app. It's just a toy app, and I think I have 13,000 libraries. And I'm just kidding.
Seems inefficient.
Yeah.
Should have sent me a screenshot for my slide. That would have been perfect.
The F workspace. I mean, that's when you're working on something by yourself, that's the time when you try extreme things and see, like, how crazy is this idea?
Well, Jeff, I think your brain might just be bigger than the rest of us, because the downside to doing that is you can't keep it all in your head. But we're not all Jeff Cross, so.
Well, that's the beauty of any kind of encapsulation and contracts is you can only keep so much in your head at any time. So the more libraries, the less you can keep your head at any time. So I think that was like a diss, Zach. Anyway, when's your next performance review?
Monday.
Let's talk Monday. All right, we've got just a minute left here. Brandon, you pick a great last question to close us out.
Oh no, we'll see how it goes.
You're not too robotic right now.
Not too bad. Okay. Maybe Zach can shed a little light on this one. We talk about big teams and big tech companies, but of the people on this call or people on this stream also work with, I'll say, smaller teams and maybe smaller projects. So what advice would you or anyone on the panel would you give to smaller teams that are using NX or maybe just getting started with it?
Yeah, everyone here's from like a massive tech company. Ionic's not as massive as the others, but Cisco, Dell, SecureWorks. But anyway, great question. I'm sure folks have different opinions.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to give some advice, it would be just try and embrace NX really well. You know what I mean? I think like there's a little bit of like learning the NX way at first. And go slow. You don't want to, end up with 1,300 libraries like Jeff right off the bat.
13,000.
13,000. My mistake. But yeah, I mean, I think that like going through some of the like the course by Yuri on Egghead, I believe he did it, and just try and like learn the NX way a little bit, and I think you'll just kind of like coast into how it feels best with your organization.
I would also add, having done a bunch of startups, that like there's nothing wrong with a somewhat well-built monolith. Like if you don't know what it's going to be, or if you're trying out a thing or something, like, yeah, like you could build all these microservices and deploy them to Lambda and, you know, set up your Terraform and do whatever, and then it doesn't work. So like it's okay to build something that is not the perfect implementation, and to then say like, well, if you use good design principles, you should be able to take that thing and break it apart later and make your libs and maybe like refine it as needed. But to start, like, it's fine if, you know, I did a startup for a year that at the end of it, every time we touch anything, all the services deployed still, because it was like, we just haven't had time. And so it's okay to do something less than perfect to get a client or to move the business forward. And then, you know, just got to make sure you make those stories and actually go back for it. Otherwise, it's kind of a disaster.
Oh, that's great. Good.
If I might add one thing, like I know it's a hard balance to maintain for smaller teams to try to do all the latest things in the technology, but also maybe take a step back and see, are we trying to future-proof ourselves way too much? Like, it's not a bad thing to have ESLint or StyleLint, even if it's just 3 people. It's not a bad thing to have Nx and be prepared for when you might have more than one app that you might have to build for. But it's also like, if that's too stressful for you to try to future-proof yourself, maybe you need some more time to do it. Only you and your smaller teammates can make that decision for you. Just because it's something new and shiny doesn't mean you have to use it, but definitely be aware of the advantages and the benefits and everything that it brings along, and always keep that in the back of the mind as you are building.
Yeah, I would argue maybe NX may be more beneficial to smaller teams based off the argument that, you know, these are things that you've got to do. Someone's got to do anyways. I'm talking to, you know, if we just break it down, like forget about some of the more advanced features of NX, but just the generators that you get out of it and just the structure you get out of it. If there's only 3 of you, for example, then one of you might need to spend a significant amount of your time managing that if you're not using something like NX, versus bringing in NX, you're automating most of that away. So to me, it seems like it may be a better benefit for small teams in that way. Less of your time that you would have to allocate towards it, you can now free up. So, yeah.
And I think
we
talked about. Sorry, go ahead, Yvonne.
I was trying to say I would have to agree with Zach, especially coming off a team who didn't use NX at all, but we used it straight Angular out of the box. There was a lot of things, especially when we were doing proof of concepts in order to upgrade to a later version of Angular, that I wish I had like NX when we were doing it, because there were a lot of things that we had to do manually that, even just off of working with my Nest and Angular application, I got a lot of things out of the box where I didn't have that when I was just working just with Angular by yourself. So it takes a lot of the grunt work out of it. So for me, I think, especially for like doing proof of concepts, it's better with NX because you get a lot of things out of the box that you wouldn't get otherwise. So when you're doing things like that, just keep things in mind, like what are you trying to accomplish and what are your goals, and that'll kind of help you guide you towards like what you need to do best for your teams.
In things like NX migrate latest, just everything just updates for you. Those are some really cool things that you can have in your kitty while trying to build it for your team. You don't have to think about the architecture so much if you're using NX. We have people join us in our team who have never used NX before, but when they see our app, like everything makes sense to them. Okay, like I know what goes in feature, I know what goes in utils, because it's the architecture just makes sense, and they don't have to. And it's so easy to adapt to it, basically, that you don't have to spend whole lot of time thinking what should the architecture of our app be like.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. That's great. Great sentiments. Lots of practical considerations. Thank you so much, folks, for your talks and for taking time to answer some questions. All right, and with that, I think now it really is lunchtime, right, Brandon?
Yes.
Okay, it's not even 10 a.m. where I am, but apparently somewhere it's lunchtime. So we're going to go to a break, and we'll be back at hour. Yep. So we've got about a 40-minute break, and we'll be back starting with one of our own, Philip Fulcher, talking about the dependency graph. It's going to be a great one. So see you folks in 40 minutes.